Welcome to Sleeping with Sarah. I'm Sarah Albritton, a narcoleptic comedian, and this is the podcast where I interview people in my bed and we talk about sleep, comedy, and relationships. This week, I'm releasing a podcast I recorded a while back with the very awesome Rachel LaForce. Rachel is a Second City Tourco alum, and now you can also catch her this upcoming Saturday, February 9th. She's producing two awesome shows at the Acme Comedy Theater in NoHo. She's producing Out Loud in Public at 8 p.m. and Second Saturdays at 9 p.m. You can also follow Rachel on Instagram at Rachel LaForce. That's RachelLaForce. We talked about a ton of awesome things, about how she got her start at Second City, navigating LA. I talk a little bit about sleep stuff and issues with that, the language you use, her pilot experience, dating priorities, and like a lot more. We had a really fun conversation, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. Sleeping with Sarah is brought to you by Audible.com. Go to audibletrial.com/sleepingwithsarah to get a free audiobook of your choice. This week, I'd like to recommend I'm Fine and Other Lies by Whitney Cummings. Again, that's audibletrial.com/sleepingwithsarah. If you like the podcast, please subscribe and rate and review on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. That really helps out a lot, and I'll be back on regular schedule with that. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Sarah Albritton. Well, let's get started with the show.
Sleeping with Sarah.
Cool.
That's always what our mic check was when I was touring with Second City, and you'd have to, because you'd always have to do like the same thing, so I would always just do like the, hi, I'm Rachel LaForce, I'm from blah, blah, blah.
Oh, that's fun.
So I do the same thing now.
Awesome.
That's just like a fun little thing about me.
I like that.
Yeah.
Well, how'd you sleep last night?
Oh, I actually slept really good last night because I like haven't been sleeping, and then and whatever. So I just have like really bad sleep patterns, and so last night I was like, there's like this guy I've been hanging out with, and he was supposed to come over, and then I was like, listen, I'd love to hang out with you, but I was like, your girl needs sleep.
Yeah.
So I like laid down at 9:30 and actually was like out by 10.
What?
And like slept till 8:30.
That's kind of unheard of. That's crazy.
Y'all, it was really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes sleeping at 9:30 and 10, getting a good night's sleep.
Well, yeah, I feel like when people are like, ugh, yeah, I can go to bed by 9. And I'm like, what? I don't, like, if I go to bed at 9, I'm for sure going to wake up at 1.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it's rare that I can go to sleep early and then sleep through the whole night.
Well, for me, it's just like 9. It's like shows start at 9.
Right.
You know? And so I'm just used to this. My energy level is different. You know, I usually nap in the afternoon anyways, you know, but like a show, my mindset is different because there's shows at 9, shows at 10, and I think just the energy because of going out and doing shows or going to shows just changes.
Yeah, it's like, this isn't a very comedic answer, but a very real answer of like, I've had to get really good at listening to my body, because people are like, well, why don't you just have a schedule? I'm like, oh, God bless you. That's really cute that you think I could do that. But where my schedule changes so often that now I just almost daily have to check in with myself of like, is today a day that you need to go to bed at 9?
Yeah.
Great, then go to bed. If it is a day where I have no energy in the afternoon and then 7:30 hits and I'm like in productivity mode, great, then go to a coffee shop that's open late and write all night, or, you know, whatever. Yeah. It's like really paying attention, because the idea of like having a solid sleep schedule is just not a reality for being in comedy. It's just
in
not.
our industry, yeah. I mean, and I think for me, this is where mine kind of lucks out a little bit, because I have narcolepsy, so it's really easy for me to go to sleep, and then and I can sleep through a lot, and so it's fairly easy, I guess, for me to do that, but at the same time, I still don't get a regular sleep cycle. It's just all messed up there.
So then, wait, so am I allowed to ask you questions?
Yeah, you can ask me questions.
So then, so there obviously, I'm sure that there's some sort of like prescription or something you're on, so you don't fall asleep while you're driving or something.
Yeah.
Right?
I've been on consistent medication for like over 9 years, you know, so it's definitely been, you know, and I never drive. There's no like official like laws. Like I I don't drive long distances by myself.
Okay.
I can drive 5-6 hours if I got a girlfriend or somebody in the car with me. I've done that, but as long as I have someone to talk to.
Yeah.
But no, I just put limits on myself. Like no more. Like in Chicago, I'd go and I'd like drive from Chicago to Milwaukee.
Yeah.
I wouldn't drive to Madison, but
Sure.
I'd drive to Milwaukee. You know.
Okay.
So like I put limits on myself. I never drive when I'm tired. You know.
Huh. And then so, it's a neurological. Okay, so then it's not even necessarily about being tired. Then
It's a lack of a chemical in my brain.
Okay.
That it's like this chemical is called orexin or hypocretin, and it communicates to my body that I've had enough sleep and rest, and also enough food. So a lot of narcoleptics are overweight because they'll just keep eating as well.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's like a lack of chemical in the brain, which they have medicine that helps, but I'm basically in REM most of the time I'm asleep. So I can be asleep. I could go to sleep for like 2 minutes and have dreams that last for hours, and I first wake up and I'm really confused.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's kind of fascinating, though.
It is fascinating and it is cool, but sometimes it can be scary because like you can have sleep paralysis with like a hallucination on top of it and all that. Like there's a lot more complicated things to it. And actually, so when I was in high school, before I knew I had this, I'd wake up every morning, I'd have a hallucination, I'd be in sleep paralysis where you feel like you can't move, I'd see a spider crawling on my leg, and, you know, I'd later wake up and realize that wasn't a real thing, you know, the spider wasn't there. But I just thought I was crazy.
Wow.
Because I just thought I'm a crazy person because I'm seeing things that aren't there. We didn't know it was narcolepsy yet, so I didn't tell anybody.
That's what I was gonna say. How would you even like? That breaks my heart.
So for like 2 years, I was thinking to myself, I'm just crazy. I'm crazy. I'm gonna have to learn how to be a crazy person and live a normal life and just do that.
Oh my god! Because I feel like every time I even like see a 16-year-old, I just want to hug them and be like, I'm so sorry. It's gonna be okay. You know what I mean? Like just being 16 in general is like the worst, much less if you're like, I think I'm crazy.
I know. I was so relieved when I finally went to neurologist, because I had a falling down thing. We went to a neurologist. He knew it was narcolepsy. He's like, have you ever, you know, when waking up, have you seen things that aren't there? I was like, I was so afraid to say yes. Because I was like, you know, you learn from movies that if you see things that aren't there, you don't tell anybody, because then you end up in the warehouse.
Fuck yeah. Oh, that's so like. Well, it's right. Yeah, comedy is tragedy plus time. Right. So now it's probably funny, but at the time,
yeah.
Oh man,
it's definitely funny now, and I think I'm pretty good about laughing about like it's. I think, you know, I don't get offended if people make fun of it.
Sure, I mean it's just an interesting way to look at the world, like anything else. And I feel like I'm sure. I don't know how old you are, but I'm sure we're somewhat similar in age. Of like the older that you get. For me, I feel like things that were huge insecurities to me growing up are now a sense of like, not necessarily like individuality or like I'm special, but at least where I'm like, that's your point of view. And that's like really cool to have that. And then it also makes being a comic great of like people who don't really have a clearly defined point of view can come to your show and laugh because they don't really have much to say, which is okay. We need people to show up and sit in the audience. But, that's funny. That's really interesting. That's really interesting.
But I kept it quiet a lot of my adult life until I started doing stand-up. And then that's when I really started accepting it, I think. Having friends that really fully understood my medicine and how that works. Having friends that fully got it. And that talk about the terms. Like, I have at least 6 or 7 close friends that refer to it as a cataplexy. You know, like, that makes me very happy, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, because I was having that discussion with somebody recently, and I was talking about how language is so important, because I was talking to somebody, and he was like, how's your day? And I said, busy, with 3 exclamations. And I was like, actually, let me rephrase that. My day is very full. Because I was like, I feel like busy connotates stressful or overwhelming. And I was like, but I just have a full day. Meaning like I'm going from thing to thing to thing. But it's all manageable as things that are exciting. And how making that adjustment also even like relaxes
your brain.
My own brain. Yeah. So I feel like it's probably the same thing of like feeling safer in a sense of like intimacy with your friends that can identify using the language that you use. Oh. I could be projecting on that, but that would make sense to me in the same way, like, you know, because sometimes I feel like conservatives, or I guess I won't speak for everyone, but even like people in my family that talk about like, you know, with like LGBTQ and or things like that. Like, oh, I wouldn't even be able to keep up if I wanted to. Like, there's always a new, how am I supposed to know what words I'm supposed to use?
Yeah.
Also, no one in my family sounds like that. But, and it's
I was like, what accent is that from? Where is that?
They're all from Texas. No, they're not. They're from the Midwest. But just, where I'm like, if it's just language, all we're asking you to learn is new language. We're not asking you for your acceptance of it. We're not asking you for your understanding or anything like that. Just learn to use the language that I think acknowledges other people.
I think that's really good.
And I think it's a really easy thing to do. And I find that, like, a lot of people, I mean, even myself, like, it is ever changing. And I can see how that might be, like, frustrating or intimidating or trivial to certain people. But it's also, like, where I would want to look at anyone that's quote unquote normal and be like, think about things that are important to you. If other people or a whole society in general was trivializing those things, like, it wouldn't feel good. So anyway, I just think that the language that we use can really alter and shift, like, our own, like, point of view and sense of being. And, like, I think it's a very powerful thing that we don't acknowledge.
I think that's very important, especially coming from clearly a writer as well. You know?
Totally.
I think that's a totally valid point. Like, that's very interesting, actually, especially with I've got lots of friends a couple friends that have switched to they and them pronouns, and that's difficult at first. Of course it is. But then it's just about making an effort and doing it, and remembering.
It's literally, don't be fucking lazy. Like that, I mean, that's the thing when people are like, oh, I don't know. It's like, just don't be lazy.
Yeah.
Don't be lazy.
Or somebody changes their name. Just deal with it.
Just say their name. What does it matter to you? Like, there's certain things where I'm like, intrinsic, like, beliefs or opinions, things like that are way more difficult to persuade or change. And, even though I view the world a certain way and I'm a huge proponent of inclusion, and I think all of those things are very simple, they're very easy adjustments, and they all should come from a place of love. I understand why people might have differing points of view, or that they're very faith-based, so they could say, well, I would love a gay person, but I'm not going to, like, advocate for them or whatever. Like, I can understand different points of view, but what I don't understand is laziness or the inability to just accept something when it's something as simple as being aware of your language. Because it literally is the number one way that we communicate, right? Like, I was, again, this guy that I've been hanging out with, and I realized it was the second time within that week that I had said that one of my girlfriends was having a meltdown. And I stopped myself and I go, I'm sorry. I go, to me, I speak very hyperbolic because I'm a comic. So that's what I'm used to. I'm always elevating whatever the thing
always
is.
heightening it.
I'm always heightening it. But I need to be very conscientious of that wording because she's not having a meltdown. She, like the situation, like she was shopping, looking for something specific, couldn't find it, got overwhelmed, which is overwhelming, right? Like so it's just like what I should have said was, hey, my friend's overwhelmed and need a little bit of support. Yeah. I gotta cancel with you, I'll catch up with you later.
And I think that would be interesting if guys started doing that more with referring to, like, exes as crazy. So
100.
A guy I was talking, I am talking to or whatever, like, I had cut my hand on I was drunk. I hit on his door, his glass door, and he said that his ex had, like, broken the window,
Oh, wow.
And he had referred to her as crazy, and he's like, wait, no, she's not crazy. She just gets emotional. So he adjusted that. And that was the first time I think I'd ever heard a guy adjust that. I was like, okay, all right, you're adjusting the language, and I appreciate that, because you're not referring to, she was just upset or has a temper. I think that's what he said. He said, she's not crazy, she just has a temper.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, that's a lot better, because this crazy girlfriend I'd be a little afraid of.
Well, yeah, and they're two very different things, right? Like, I mean, it's just any way that we are communicating what something is, and especially where I've realized that for myself of, like, your daily interactions, if you're reaffirming something that somebody already thinks. If somebody already thinks that women are, like, crazy or, like, have meltdowns or whatever, then I'm just reaffirming that thing. And that's not what I want to be doing. And sure, is that, like, too minuscule or too micro? I don't think so. Not for me. It doesn't take much energy for me to readjust what it is that I'm saying, because then it also makes me more mindful of what I'm consciously or subconsciously believing about myself or the world around me or the company I keep, like all of that. And anyway, I think it's important.
No, I think so too.
I started to become more aware of it for a myriad of reasons, but there was a TED Talk that I watched, and it was on a woman who teaches linguistics, and she was talking about that simply the way as Americans and English speakers we go through the world is vastly different than I think it was like a tribe in like Botswana or something like that. Similarly, I actually should know because it would be a different country and or city, so that is important. But I don't remember. But the point being that the way in which different cultures use their language, one thing might not even mean another. Like the way that Americans talk about direction is different than other tribes even. So if there was a way that an American tried to describe to a tribesman of how to get somewhere, it would literally be impossible for them to get there based off of simply the way...
take the 405 to the...
Right, like even as simple as like, oh, we go left or we go right, they go forward, they go backwards. Like things like that. So how literally we view the world differently of what we can and cannot do strictly because of the words we use.
Interesting. Huh. I find etymology really interesting. So
Yes!
it's very cool.
I think,
And actually, speaking of this little transition to a question I had, because I love your last name. Is that your real last name?
It's
or
my
is that
real last name.
LaForce?
Yes.
Like, that is just, like, that's gotta feel kind of strong, like, coming up like a force of, like...
Yeah.
Does it mean the force, I'm guessing? Or no?
I believe so, yeah, because it's French-Canadian, so it's literally just, the force is what it means. And
that's a badass, name.
Well, I also love that it's la, because that's feminine, so it's literally a feminine force, rather than, like, le force, which would be masculine. So, it's interesting, because I, read this book called Light is the New Black. It's by this woman, Rebecca Cambell. She's, like, a spiritual... leader, I guess. She lives in London. She's really phenomenal, but she wrote this book, and one section of the book talks about nominative determinism. Basically, how certain people's names determine their outcome. So, like...
so if you were named if you weren't a Rachel, if you were something else, like if you were a Cheryl or a Susie or something, that would affect who you are, and you'd probably be a different person.
Sure, yeah. I mean, potentially, like, the one is, like, someone's last name, and their last name was, like, Wordsman, and they were actually, like, a poet, and then another woman's last name was, was, like, Congress or something, and she was in the government, and so just kind of, like, how sometimes, like, your name can determine different parts of, like, about you or a sense of identity. And so then in reading that was when, like, I kind of rediscovered, like, a new love for my last name, because it was like, oh... You are literally a female force. It is your job to be,
a strong female voice, which is, like, I think that's so awesome.
And also knowing how, like, I'm not, like, a huge, fan of Star Wars, surprised as no one, but the ability that there's a dark side and a light side with the Force. And, like, that's, like, a lot of the work I've been doing on myself of, like, really paying attention to, like, the dark sides of myself or, like, parts of my ego versus, like, being able to find, like, a balance between, like, your light side and living in that and, like, allowing other people to see it, but then also kind of being able to honor the not so great parts of yourself and the things you need to work on and, like, finding a way to,
That's one thing I've noticed about California. I feel like a lot of people are way more in tune with them, like, improving themselves.
That's part of moving here. If you move here, then you have to go to, you got to go to therapy, you got to do crystals.
Yeah, I feel like everyone's, like, and I was, like, I've always been big on energy anyways, so it's, like, I like being around people with, like, positive energy and, like, that invigorate, and I'm, like, there's so much of this here, and I think that's why I'm so happy, so much creative energy, so much, like, positive people that are trying to be better, people losing weight, people that are trying to just become the best version of themselves here, which is very nice.
Yeah, I actually believe 99% of it is that the sun always shines here. And, like, I say that as a joke and a very, like, truthful thing of, like, the amount of happiness that just being in the sun, having a sunny day provides. But yeah, I mean, I do think that, like, obviously Southern California stereotypically lends itself to all of that. But I know for me, and I can only speak for myself, of, like, I've had, like, a weight loss journey, both consciously and subconsciously, that's happened for me since living here. I've, like, really rediscovered my own comedic voice. I've learned to really trust it. I've learned, like, So I feel like if someone's like, I don't know, I'm struggling to find myself, I'd be like, you should move to Southern California.
I mean, it's just other things. Like, I didn't know I liked hiking. I hike like 3 times a week. I love
100.
it. Like, it's things like that. And you came from Chicago, too. Mm-hmm. So when did you move here? And when did you start comedy?
So, so I was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. And then I had always done theater and things like that. So originally I wanted to be a musical theater major, and I wanted
I could see that.
Yes,
I could definitely see that.
So theatrical. My big dream was Broadway. So I wanted to go to the Tisch School at NYU. And then I guess when I was 17, about when I was applying to colleges, my mom married a man who had been living in Chicago. And he was he's still with us. And he's, shout out to Mark Blotner. And he is very artistic. He's a filmmaker and documentarian. And so he was very influential to me at that time because my mom and my dad have always been immensely supportive of me doing this, but know nothing of the business at all. Like, didn't even know how to get me into an acting class. Like, they knew nothing. So Mark was very influential at being like, oh, I got this. Like, I can help guide you. So we went to Chicago, and I had barely really even known anything about the Second City. He kind of prepped me as to what it was. And then, same as most people that have had this experience, where I went and I saw a show, and it was that thing of like, what is that? Like, whatever that thing is, like, that's the thing I have to do. Like, I had seen SNL, I had grown up watching stand-up, all of that, but I always loved theater, but I had never seen comedic theater. I had never seen that magic trick before. So then I was like, fuck New York, fuck Broadway, I'm going to Second City. So I went to school at Columbia College in Chicago. Okay. Did you go to Columbia?
I went to NIU. So
okay.
It's like the suburbs. So, but similarly, when I was in college, I would come in the summers, and that's when I started doing like IO and Second City. And
so you do like the intensives and stuff?
No. I did the regular ones because I would go once a week, like on Sundays when we had our day off. Because we wouldn't have shows on Sundays or rehearsal, so there was the one day a week. So I would go and I would drive in and take IO, and I think I did Second City Conservatory too while I was still in college.
Gotcha, that makes sense.
And then. But I loved it, and then I knew, and then I made sure I graduated early so that I could like come and move to Chicago. Yeah. Of course, dead of winter, but
Yeah, why not? Best time.
But I was, so I was also in very serious, I did theater since I was like 5, and I was always cast in very serious roles. I didn't think I could be funny until,
interesting.
Like, I took a clowning class I did British American Drama Academy, a study abroad thing.
Oh, cool.
With Mick Barnfather. I took a clowning class. I was like, oh yeah, I can be funny. And then I took improv, and I was like, oh yeah, I can be funny in a group. And then it was like slowly progression until like, oh no, I've got this. I can do it on myself.
Yeah. No, I know. It's interesting because so I guess like fast forwarding, then I obviously went to Columbia College, and I was still a theater major. I was still a musical theater major actually when I started. And then Sheldon Patinkin, who has since passed, but he was the head of our theater department and the artistic director of Second City for, decades. Yeah. So he had seen me perform more and more, and he was like, you really should not be in musical theater. And I remember being crushed. And he was like, and the reason is he was like, you belong in comedic roles. And he was like, you could stay doing musical theater, but you're competing with people who can only do musical theater, and you can do more than musical theater. And I remember that was like, I mean, that was the most, what's the word when you're wanting somebody to this most affirmation.
Oh yeah.
It was the most affirmation verbally from somebody who had seen, hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people and famous people, come up, that I was like, that's all I needed. So I switched my major. And
Did they have the comedy major back then?
So they didn't have the comedy major yet, but I was the second class that went through comedy studies.
Okay, so you had something. That
was kind of like the transition. So I did comedy studies, then I graduated, and then did conservatory, and then, similarly to when you're doing open mics, right? I was doing with my independent improv team, and I was doing bar prov. Like, there's not a place I hahaven't done comedy.
Oh my gosh. I mean? But Chicago was so great for that. Just like wherever was so great. Like
totally.
These little bar shows, and then you're that energy bubble. You're like, oh, I just want to perform as much as possible with my improv group, and we'll get a run at Donnie's Skybox or at the playground.
Yes,
or whatever.
When we got our run at Donnie's Skybox, I mean,
it's such a big deal.
You would have thought, Literally, though, you would have thought that, like, we had arrived. I mean, we were so, like, but fuck, man, like, I am so glad that I'm that excited again. Like, it's literally taken me since then, that was almost 6 years ago. It's taken me this long to get that excited again.
Yeah.
And, like, I mean, sure, looking back on it now, I'm like, oh, Donnie Skybox, that's not important. Yeah. But at the time, like, that was a huge milestone. We'd worked hard enough. We got that thing. Like, it was important. Yeah. So anyway, then I subsequently had auditioned for Second City and then eventually got hired.
Did you start out touring or?
Yeah, so that's all I did. I didn't do a boat. I got hired. I understudied for 6 months, and then Cecily Strong left and went to SNL.
So I had IO level 5Bs with her.
Oh, okay. So did you went through with like Greg Worsley?
Yeah, I know Greg. Yeah. And John Ald.
Yeah.
John, so there's actually a pretty good group we had.
Yeah.
And Bina, I can't remember her last name. It's horrible. Bina, she's also really great. I think she's either understudy main stage or something, but she, there's a good group we have.
Yeah. You guys were a really good class.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was, there were a lot of good people. So that was like very much my generation. God, was like coming up with all those people.
That was like 7 years ago.
I know. I mean, God bless Facebook for being like, here's what you posted 7 years ago. I'm like, which sometimes is like cringeworthy, but sometimes it's really great to be like, wow, I've actually made like a lot of progress or done something different.
I think the thing that people forget, like, especially with stand-up, it's like comparing yourself to somebody else and where they were, and you just compare yourself to where you were last year. Like, am I better than where I was this time last year? And fuck yes. So it doesn't, because some people get salty about other people getting opportunities, like when they're, they haven't put as much time in, and it's whatever,
Yeah. I think that's the easiest way to tank yourself. I mean, comparing yourself to other people is the quickest way to tank yourself, because like Second City, so I understudied for 6 months, and then I toured for 2.5 years. And then it was surprising to me because I had never dreamt beyond Second City, like realistically, because that was my dream. And then I did it, and then subsequently had gotten my agents out here in LA through touring. And so I it was time for me to go. It was one of those of like, I could stay for one more year, but I'm done. But I've been out here now for 3 years.
Okay.
So I left Second City, I was done, and then I've been out here for 3. And I actually just had a meeting with my manager prior to this, where I was like, oh, I know what I want to do now.
Oh, yeah?
And he goes, oh yeah? And like, I mean, he was like, do you want to do this over the phone? I was like, no, I got to come into the office. Like, I'll bring you coffee, we'll have a whole thing. And he represents, like, some really, like, legitimate talent. And I was like, no, I've got to, like, get this FaceTime. And my whole thing was basically where I was like, I know what I want to do now. Like, I know the plan now. Yeah. Because the thing that I feel like most people don't tell you is there's so much more navigation that happens out here. Mm-hmm. And I've had some friends that have gotten... are not very lucky very quickly, because they're all my friends that are working are insanely talented, but have gotten their break very, very, it's clicked along for them very easily. And then I have other friends, similar to me, where like, we're working. I mean, last year was the first year that I lived very comfortably off of the money I made doing the thing I love to do. So
that's amazing.
If nothing else, 3 years in, I'm like, God bless. I'm thankful for it.
Yeah.
But obviously still always, want more and more. But I feel like as soon as you start comparing yourself to other people, it's just a really it doesn't help. And I'm a big proponent of like, any way that I'm operating or spending my time, does it bring me joy? Does it, like, what does it bring me? Yeah. And that's a thing that does nothing but take away. Yeah. So I don't fucking have time for it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not helpful.
It's like, and also I'm really happy for my friends that have awesome things going for them.
Totally.
Like, I just, I don't care. Like, I don't see it as a competition. I think if we're all working as hard as we are, and we all want this as bad as we do, it will all eventually happen.
Yeah.
I don't know which of the things are going to hit or what it is, but I'm not really worried about that, because if you stick in this long enough, this is what you do,
Yeah.
But you've gotten to work on some cool things though since you've been out here, right? Didn't you?
I got to do the first TV role that I did was it was a guest spot on Whitney Cummings' original pilot called A Lot. That was for HBO. It didn't end up getting picked up, which was also great that my first TV role was like a very stereotypical, like, this was a pilot, didn't get picked up.
So what was that process like for the pilot? Like, is that like, because like you go and you film the whole pilot, right?
Right.
And it's just a waiting game to see if it gets picked up?
Yeah, so I'm not as well versed on it because that's the other thing, like I was talking about with my manager today, that so much of Hollywood is like a complete dichotomy where it's like hurry up and wait, but like also always be ready, or things are always changing. Like you just have to be super fucking flexible all the time. But yeah, normally there's like a 2-year lean on a pilot. So a production company will pay, like if you have your own pilot, you sell it to a production company, they buy it, so they pay you as the writer, and then they pay for the whole production of the pilot. Then you take the pilot out and you shop it to networks. Yeah. Then the network gives you normally it's a 2-year contract, and then they have what's called a lien on it, and they have 2 years to decide if they want to do it. Now, sometimes you can buy the rights back. Sometimes you can't. There's
sometimes you end up in like limbo, like Rhea and Cameron with their show.
Yes. Which
I thought that was like, I read that and I was like so heartbroken by that. That just sucks to have filmed a whole season and not be able to do anything with it.
Yeah, well, that was the CISO thing, right? Yeah.
Because they had the first season out, which I thought was pretty good, and then they had a second season they had filmed, and I don't know if it was mostly edited or, but they couldn't do anything with it because nobody else bought it.
Yeah. Well, and that, I think to what you said earlier, I don't know, when you said, I don't know which thing is going to work out, but I know something will. And that's the other thing that's interesting here, too, is like, I can't get too attached, which is why I've now really fallen in love with stand-up, because it's the only thing that I give energy to that always gives me energy back.
Yeah.
It's the thing that makes my soul happy, but also makes me feel like all the other parts of myself that I somewhat sacrifice, being far away from my family, not owning a home yet, things like that, that if I was in another field of any sort, I probably would be closer to my family. I would already have, those things. It makes me, at the end of the day, I'm like, I'm proud of what I did today. I'm happy with what I did today, and I'm proud of myself, because everything else is completely out of your control, you know, where it's like,
and to be in that moment, because LA is such a waiting game. The great thing about stand-up is you get, and I've said this lots of time on my podcast before, but I don't care. So you get that immediate response.
Yes.
There are very few things in life where you get that immediate response. They love you or they hate you, but when they love you, when they're in your pocket, nothing else feels better than that.
Yeah.
And you can't blame it on, so when I did improv, I used to sometimes blame, I used to be like, okay, the whole group was funny. It wasn't,
Sure.
I wouldn't always take but when it's stand-up, it is just you. Really is. Yeah. Just you. I mean, overall the energy of the room, there's other things that can do it, but it really is just you. So when you win, it just feels amazing,
Well, that's the interesting thing of like, I think I always really wanted to do stand-up, but I couldn't fully stand behind the things that I had to say. I was still too scared of what I had to say. And not that anything I have to say is all that radical. But, even like right now, I have like 5 minutes on like entering my sexual prime and basically talking about like all the things that are happening to my body. And I'm like, why did nobody warn me? Like nobody warned me that this was going to happen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm like, why is nobody talking about this? Like, I can't be the only one who's walking around in heat all of the time, you know?
Oh, yeah.
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 And so it's all of these things. And obviously it's funnier than that. There's jokes, but, but talking about that, like anything in that would make me feel vulnerable or Christian guilt of like, you shouldn't talk about that on stage. Like now I'm like, listen, I'm in my 30s. I don't give a shit. Like this is my truth. If it's happening to me, it's happening to other people, and somebody has to talk about it.
Yeah.
Because to your point, like having an audience is the most gratifying thing, sure, on like an egotistical level, but I always say, I'm like, hearing that huge laugh is recognition. It's recognition of like, oh God, thank God, not just me.
Yeah, we understand it, or we get it, and we relate, and we also find it funny and entertaining. And so that combination, because I honestly think a lot of stand-ups are also philosophers in a way, or like people like, it's basically great stand-up, I think, is that you have a good thesis statement and you're backing it up with jokes, you know, and you're making a point. And I do think that comedy makes a big point. And I do think comedy does create social change in a much less maybe obvious way than some things, but I think that it definitely does affect society in terms of acceptance, in terms of even just thinking about things in a different way. And that's also why I think that it almost makes more effective a change than, like, you know, being a politician or something.
Well, because it welcomes a conversation in a safe environment. Because it gives you something to laugh at. And you can't be angry and also be laughing. You can, but it's very maniacal. But, you know, for the most part, I feel like
Well, you let your guard down when you laugh.
Yes. And there's a sense of humanity. It just gave me goosebumps. There's a sense of humanity that happens when... that gives you this juxtaposition, and I know I'm like the 9 millionth person to talk about Hannah Gadsby's special Nanette. Have you seen it yet?
Yeah, I've seen that.
So, everybody was talking about it, and I hadn't found time to watch it, and I finally sat down and watched it, and it was one of those where, like, I would stop it, and then I would go back and watch a bit, and I would watch it again, and it was, like, it was so genius, and I had a buddy of mine who views the world very, very differently than me. And I was like, watch this special and let me know what you think. I was like, if it's best you can, just watch it.
Yeah.
Just watch it. You're not watching it for anything else but just to take it in, and then let's talk about it. And so it was so interesting of, like, being able to see something done so well, of, like, also to your point where you're like, it's so great to have an audience in your pocket, is that feeling of, like, you were the conductor. You were leading how this goes. And that's what when she talks about that tension and releasing tension, and, like, it's just so powerful. And that's also, like, I mean, I love a good Ellen DeGeneres special of just joke,
yeah.
storytelling, joke. John Mulaney is very similar in that way.
But I also like, there was this piece that actually talked about the structure of how Ali Wong structured her jokes in her specials.
Yeah, also
which
one of my
I
favorites.
thought that was, like, brilliant. Just the way, like, basically they did it by categories, and, like, they
And
have
where is
whole,
this? I want to watch.
I have it in a link somewhere. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
And hopefully I'll add it on the link to the podcast too. But it's a very cool thing. I'm on, like, a bunch of weird writers groups on Facebook, and so I just, like, take all this, like, info in. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. But it basically broke up her different sections of her special into different categories, and it kind of showed, like, how she had kind of worked with the ebb and flow of the thing to really just have it balanced and have it a very solid hour long that worked really well.
Yeah.
And it was like somebody just kind of analyzing it. I was like, that's so interesting. Like, that's just so, you don't think about that. It's like, oh, like, am I ever going to do a special where people are going to, like, analyze that? And,
Fuck
like,
yeah.
think that, you know, and, like, and you talk about Nanette, so there's another special that's coming out from another Chicagoan, Drew Michael, that seems like it's going to be very interesting. It's an HBO special where he filmed it with no audience.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think it was directed by Jared Carmichael. Gotta double check that. But I saw a promo for that, and it seems like they also have some visual things in it as well. It seems very interesting. I'm very curious at how that is going to turn out. Because Drew is hilarious. He writes. He did or does write on SNL for the Weekend Update.
Yeah, I think I follow him on Instagram.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know him that well. I know he comes from Chicago, but I think he was on his way out when I was coming up there for stand up. Did you do stand up in Chicago?
No, so the stand up is a very new development for me.
Oh man.
So yeah, well, it's interesting. I want to go back to what you were saying about Ali Wong, because what's interesting is, like, some people that and let me preface this by saying I have a lot of work to do to get my sets and my material to where I want it to be, but I'm also, it's been like, we're people that I've done shows with, and then afterwards, like, hey, you were very funny, I'd love to put you on my show, you know, and that happens and whatever, and they're like, how long have you been doing stand-up? And I'm not really sure what answer to say yet, because I started, the first stand-up set I did was like a year ago, but then I've just done it very intermittently.
Yeah.
So even so, now I'm basically like 3 months.
Yeah.
And they're like, what?
Yeah.
I'm like, keep in mind, I'm a performer.
Yeah.
I already know how, the hardest things in my mind you have to learn is, how does an audience view you? What do they think of you? What jokes can I say? Like, again, Ali Wong, there are jokes that she can say that are hilarious that aren't going to be funny coming out of Chris Rock's mouth and vice versa, right? Like, how do we view you? How do you use that to your advantage? How do you, like, all of those things? I've already done all of that work.
And also, to your point, I mean, another person that came up that I don't think he's probably less than 2 years. And Dwayne Perkins, you know, you know, like, he's hilarious, but he also came from doing Second City, from doing these things, and he was doing a show. I think he started when he was in DC. He's doing a show with Sonia Denise and
Three-Peat?
Thelonious Monk. Yeah, no, it wasn't Three-Peat. It was what is it? The Dark Side of the Moon or something like that. It was all people of color cast, which was great. And I think at least half of them were stand-ups.
Okay.
And so he was one that wasn't a stand-up, but he had all these people that were stand-ups, and that's when he started.
Gotcha.
And now he's, like, crushing it, and he's hilarious. And he's only, like, 2 years in, but you know, it's questionable, you know, like...
Yeah.
And I always get thrown off because I did improv and sketch for years before I did stand-up. So people ask me how long I've been doing comedy. I'm like, well, I've been doing stand-up for, like, 4.5 years. But comedy, almost 10, you know.
Totally. And that's the thing, like, I want to get a year into this so that when people say, how long have you been doing stand-up, I can say a year. Like, I feel like I have a concrete answer. Because I find now when people are like, oh, like, how long have you been doing stand-up, I give this, like, weird... Where I'm like, don't give an answer where you instantly give your power away. You know? Where I'm like, well, I don't, you know?
Yeah.
But to that point of, like, the other great thing that doing Second City taught me is how to make an RO. How to structure jokes. How to, like, you know, teach us how to watch you in the first 30 seconds. So what do I want the audience to know about me in the very first 30 seconds I'm on stage? Then from there, it's like... You know, and the same way of like, I want to hit you with like 3 hard jokes. So that way you trust me. You know I'm going to be funny. You don't have to worry about it. I got this. You can sit back. And then I can take a little bit longer. I can tell you a story because I can trust that you can sit there in silence and not get nervous. And then...
You're not getting nervous is not a laugh for a minute.
Right.
You know?
And then I can pay it off by hitting some jokes. And then in the middle, I can try some more risky stuff or maybe the new material I'm trying out because it's right in the middle. And then I can tell one more quick story, and then I can run it out with quick jokes.
Yeah.
And then even, you know, like, making something very melodic and then very staccato, and, like, all of those ways that you can fuck with something to really make it, like...
A piece.
And that's when I love, like... I keep forgetting when people are, like... The terminology I find very sexy right now about stand-up, and I'm, like, falling in love with it of, like... You know, the idea of, like, of your set. Yeah. Meaning that it's, like, it's your, you know, it is your piece. It's, like, having this sense of ownership. And I think for a while, because I'm so theatrical, I maybe was like, oh, stand-up, maybe I like it, but it's not the thing I want to do because it's not as performance-based. And now I'm like, no, there's so much manipulation that you can do within the medium.
And even some people, like, I know some people that are so brilliant at making something seem so off the cuff, and it is totally not.
Yeah.
Totally not. That is a very interesting skill. There's one joke I kind of work my way in that, and I think I'm getting there with the way I say it, where it seems completely off. But it's like, originally the first time I just said it was completely off the cuff, and it worked really well. And it's just about trying to like adjust that. And I think my biggest struggle with starting stand-up after doing improv and sketch for 70 years and acting is I didn't know how to be myself on stage.
Totally.
And I guess with Second City, they try to have you be characters closer to yourself, right?
Yeah. Well, more it's from hosting, like hosting the top of shows at Second City and things like that, where I got very used to being presentational Rachel. And so it's interesting because, like, which makes dating interesting when dudes hang out with me then later off stage, or like, especially if I like create more of like an intimate relationship with somebody, whether physically or emotionally, of like, there's this very raw, brassy, like direct version of Rachel that I get to exercise very much on stage. That's a huge part of me. But there's also very like quiet, very grounded, very like nurturing Rachel that I think sometimes like when men get to see, they're like, I never would have known that existed.
Yeah,
like,
or been like, or just thrown off, like think that you're on all the time or something. And it's like, it doesn't like that.
Yeah. And I'm certainly not that. I know appropriately when which is also why even like before recording this, I do often ask him like, is the goal to be funny? Or do you want to have a conversation? Because there are two different things.
No, I want to have an interesting conversation that explores these things that we both love.
Totally.
And that's the goal of mine, just to... Because, I mean, sure, we could do something where we're just, chuckle, we're on, but I think it's more interesting because I think comedians are very deep and have, like, so many levels. It's not just about that.
I mean...
That's why I find it hard to, like... I mean, I feel like I have so many... My friends and everyone I'm surrounded by is so interesting. Like, dating someone that's not creative just can't work for me. It's too boring.
Yeah, it's brutal. It's really brutal. Like, yeah, just when where I'm like, what are you passionate about? Like,
and if people are like, what do you do for... Oh, I drink, or I go to the bar. And I'm like, no, like, that's...
I know. I'm like, that what? Yeah, it's interesting. Like, it's, I don't know. I find dating to be very difficult. When I first started seeing my therapist I have now, and I was talking to her about dating, and one of the first things she said to me, she said, I'm going to tell you right now, she goes, life is really hard for smart people, and it's even harder for smart women. And I was like, that was like one of the first sessions that I had with her, and I was just like, oh, shit. But yeah, specifically with dating, I feel like again, that idea of time, if you're going to give your time to someone or to something, does it bring you joy? Does it match your effort? All of those things. And I'm like, I'm not picky, but I am certainly selective with who and how I spend my time.
I am too. And I think I've been kind of... with dating, and I am dating, and I actually found it way easier than dating in the Midwest. I don't know why. Maybe it's just I think guys here are way more direct, they're way more like, I want to take you out, and I feel like I had this impression that I would be so self-conscious living in LA because it's filled with beautiful people, but I feel like people are way more vocal about it, like that I'm beautiful and things like, and not that I didn't think I was pretty or whatever, but it's just I think the people in the Midwest are way more quiet about that stuff. Or maybe just don't vocalize it or whatever. I don't know. I just find it way more... People have been way more outgoing or showing interest very clearly versus pussyfooting around like a lot of Midwest guys do.
Interesting. That's interesting. Hearing you say, I had that really big fear when I was first coming out to visit, because I had been dating somebody long distance that lived out here. I used to perform with him in Chicago, and then he had moved out here. I was dating him long distance before I moved out here. And I used to get super insecure about coming to visit. Like, I don't know, I guess in my mind, like, I thought, like, every single place I went, people were going to be gorgeous or something.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think I kind of thought the same thing. And I was just like...
what a silly thing, but really but I do forget. It's also because I don't really hang out in those areas, and like I'll forget, and then for some reason like find myself at like a pool party at the Roosevelt and be like, oh, here they are.
Yeah.
That's because they all hang out in packs. That's what it is. You know what I mean? But I'm like, so that those areas do exist, but it's the same thing of being in Chicago. Like if you want to find,
yeah,
just... whatever it is you're looking for, you can find it. It's just, but I had that same point of view before getting here. And then I was like, oh, most people are like pretty normal looking.
But I think my biggest fear right now, it's like, I don't want to commit to a relationship or anything because I'm working on the stuff I'm working on, and that has to come first.
Amen.
And it's like, and I'm talking to people, and there's some people that are wanting more serious stuff. And I'm like, maybe, but comedy like is going to absolutely come before you, and I don't think people believe me when I say that, and that's what worries me. And it's like, yeah, but comedy is gonna come first. Like, if you want to hang out, okay. I mean, I might be done at 11:30 tonight. We can come and hang out, but it's because I think I'm too afraid of like falling in love and then that becoming the most important thing and not achieving the things I want to achieve.
I mean, 100%. And I think it's interesting. So I had been, actually, and then the other half of my stand-up right now, I open talking about my sexual prime. And then I talk about that it feels good to finally feel sexual again because I went through like a really tough breakup the breakup itself was very clean, but he and I had to live in the same house for 50 days. So I have this whole bit about...
we had like 30 days we stayed at our place. So
Yeah. It's like... I mean, it's comedic gold, but at the time I was like, this is like awful. And he's very lovely, and you know, the whole thing of how it ended, it is what it is, and it was all supposed to work. But so I talk about what it was like living in a sad house and like what that's like. And then I transition out of that, and I'm like, you know, the problem is that we don't tell the truth when we're dating. And so we're clickbait versions of ourselves to other people. And then when you finally start to let your guard down and you show somebody what it is that you really want or who you really are, suddenly it's like, oh, no wonder we're not figuring it out, because we both have just been pretending to tell the truth when we're not actually telling the truth this entire time. And,
so you think I don't know if maybe I am lying to myself. I don't know.
Like, no, I'm not saying that to you. I was just commenting of like, that's why I think it's so good that you are that vocal and aware.
But the thing is, I say that though, and I think that people don't believe that I really mean that. And that's what I'm afraid of. It's like they'll hear it and they're like, okay, yeah, sure. But then like, they really think in the future that I'll put them first, you know?
Oh, well, I know what that feels like, because I did that with my boyfriend, but in the opposite. Okay. Where I was like, no, I mean, I know he's like emotionally unavailable, but just if I really show him how much I love him, then like maybe he'll feel safe enough to really let his guard down with me. And it's like, no, when people tell you who they are, believe them. When people show you who they are, believe them. But I do understand what you're saying to that effect of like, what is my responsibility when I've like, similarly I'm in that situation and dating and vocalizing that, but still finding that I'm spending a lot of time like with certain people. But I'm like, well, when is it my responsibility to be like, hey, just a reminder, like just checking in. Like I care about you and I like being here, but like I can only invest emotionally so much into this right now. Versus what is their responsibility to take care of themselves.
Yeah, and that's just the thing I worry about, and it's just a weird, I don't know. That's just like the thing I'm worried about right now. It's like I'm dating different people that I like for different reasons, and I feel like they're all feeling a lot stronger for me than I am for them, and that's like a scary thing, because I don't want to hurt anybody. And I just want to keep the situation kind of like, I want to just keep it like it is. I feel like a dude. I feel like a dude. I so feel like a dude. Like,
I know.
Like,
but it's so true where you're like, oh, please don't catch feelings too soon, because I'd really like to ride this out for a couple more months. Like,
yeah. Or just like, I just want a platonic guy friend.
I know. And
I have them. I do have them. But it's just...
Yeah, well, it's, you know... I feel very much the place that I'm in right now is like just a place of like discovery, and that things are new and things are exciting. And I am so fucking happy just to be in that place again. Where like for so long I felt like I was like working towards this thing and it had to be that thing. And, you know, and then it was like after my relationship ended, and then I went through a transition with like my agents and managers, and like there was like so many things coming to an end, and like all these things I'd just been grasping and holding on to, rather than ever once stopping and asking myself of like, hey, is this fun at all? Because to me it doesn't look like you're having any fun, you know? And so it was interesting of just like learning to just completely like let go of all expectations of any sort, and just, like, embrace being in my 30s, where I'm like, I haven't felt this free since I was in my early 20s. And, like, even in college. But it's so much better because I'm not in college.
Yeah.
And, like, I have money to, like, do fun things, do the things I want to do, and, like, have the freedom to go and do them.
Yeah.
So rather than being like, I was supposed to have this thing, and da-da-da, it's like, yeah, but, like, awesome.
Yeah.
You can just go do whatever you want to do.
Yeah, being an adult kind of rocks, like, you know, like...
Yeah, I mean, like, calling the IRS because they messed up a payment, or, like, you know...
Having to go to the DMV for a day and a half trying to get your California freaking license.
Yeah,
you know?
Like, that's the worst. But, yeah, the flip side of that, especially to your point of, like, living in LA is such, like, it feels like a playground. Like, the ability to go and hike, or go to the beach, or go, like...
Yeah.
There's literally so many, you know... ways to have like an adventure for the day that I don't really find a lot of cities have as much. They definitely exist, but it is
in Chicago, it's like your adventure is really limited to like 4 months out of the year.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's like unless you're like an avid skier, you know, and like, you know, don't mind like skiing in, you know, the back hills of Wisconsin, like
hills.
Yeah.
Not mountains.
Exactly.
Hills.
Exactly.
I'm actually very excited because I'm like, oh, I could actually go ski in like real mountains again.
Totally.
You know?
Big Bear. Yeah. It's like, there's just so many more, options. And I feel like it's a very vibrant, fun city where people are like, I don't know. It's also, to me, it's very much a city of like, kind of what we were talking about earlier with like language and the idea of like how your language changes, makes subtle changes to change your perspective on a situation. I feel like it's the same way here. Like, if there's something that you're looking for, you can find it. But if you want to look for bitter, if you want to look for I'm not enough, if you want to look for it's too expensive, it's too crowded, trust me, you'll find all of that.
Yeah.
But if you want to find, like, adventure, opportunity, like, excitement, like, beautiful people, like, driven people, creative people, like, all of that's here too. And I feel like it's just making that adjustment sometimes daily, sometimes monthly, sometimes minute by minute, depending on the day.
Yeah.
Until you're just like, I can decide how I want to like view all of this.
I think that's great. I think that kind of transitions a little bit to, so as we're winding down the podcast, I always ask people kind of like what your dreams and goals are for your future.
Oof.
And I like to have people say it out loud because I think that it'll be interesting to see how that manifests once you say it out loud sometimes. Yeah, I'm trying to get more comfortable with it. Right now my goal is just to keep going out and doing shows, doing the work, because that's the place I'm at right now. And then, I would like to do some mini tours. I'd like to do, JFL, get some heat, and then do some specials, whether for HBO or Netflix, whether it starts as like 15-minute special, like on the stand-ups or something, and then transitions into, 30-minute special, an hour special. So that's kind of my goal, is to use stand-up as the vehicle to strengthen my voice, let people know who I am, get some fame, get some notoriety, get a fan base. And then from there, I would love to be able to either like pitch my own shows, and or have like more opportunity to do other people's shows. I'd love to write a book. And yeah, I've got a couple of shows that I'm working on with another buddy of mine that we're pitching to Comedy Central, and a couple of other, like an animated show that I'm working on trying to find a home for as well. So yeah, so those are things hopefully that like I'm trying to get going, up and running right now, but also all of those things so that when I do my Netflix special, when I do those things, and then finally people are like, oh, we know you've been doing this for 20 years, but now we know who you are. So do you want to do more of it? And you're like, yeah, I'd love to. It's the 20 years to an overnight success.
Right. It's like once those opportunities come into fruition that I have product to show, and I can say, yes, I've got this I'd love to do, this project, and then have this stuff ready. So
I love that. You seem like someone very prepared. Yeah.
Those are, well, that's the thing. It's like, I'm
luck is preparation plus like opportunity.
Yeah. As soon as somebody's like I'm going, yes, here's what I've got,
Yeah. That's what I tried to come here with too. I'm just like, I've got these things and hopefully we'll just see what.
Yeah. And then with that, I mean, I'm a huge fan of manifestation, and as vulnerable as it honestly makes me to like say those things out loud, is also, yes, to your point, the more I tell people, then the more I have to show up and do the work.
That's what I did when I was moving to LA. I started telling people I'm moving to LA. I'm moving to LA. I originally wanted to be last fall, but it ended up being this spring. But I was like, but I did it. But I was part of me was holding myself accountable by telling people moving to LA. And then when people started asking me, when are you moving to LA? And I didn't have a date yet. I was like, all right, I'm figuring that out. It was like holding myself accountable. Yeah. And then, but also saying you're going to do something and then following through is an important thing to do too.
Yeah. It's but again, it's that idea of language, of the more that I continue to say and be comfortable with identifying, people are like, what do you do? And being able to say, I'm a comic. And being able to like take ownership over that word, but then also with that, it's like, okay, great, but you also have to do the work. So then, and not to say that I haven't been, but just meaning obviously and wanting to continue to do it and build. I mean, obviously build a career. That's what I want. But you know, like going back to what I said a couple of minutes ago, of like, I'm just having a really good time, and so it's like being able,
really happy.
Yeah, being able to like go and do the work. And so it's almost like going to the gym where people are like, I go to the gym because like, yes, it makes me look good, but it makes me feel good. That's how I feel. Like hopefully stand-up there will be fruits of my labor. But for right now, if nothing else, whether it's a great set or a not so great set, I can be like, oh, I did that thing for myself today.
That's great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing the podcast.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me.
And we always end by saying good night. So good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks for listening to Sleeping with Sarah, where I slept with Rachel LaForce. Be sure to follow Rachel on Instagram at Rachel LaForce and check out her new comedy night at Acme this Saturday, February 9th. If you like the podcast, please rate and review on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Google Play. We're brought to you by Audible.com. Go to audibletrial.com/sleepingwithsarah. I'm releasing a new podcast each week, so please tune in to find out who I have in bed with me next. Thanks to Josh Bryant for the music, and if you want to find out more, please go to sarahallbritton.com and follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Sarah Albritton. Until next time, good night.